and you always get the signal before us. See, I'm getting nothing.
Are we live?
I'll be
live. Say that, don't we? Yeah, just say live. Yeah, in the time-honored tradition of these things, we have to say, "Are we live?"
That's weird because I'm not picking it up.
I had to go into my subscriptions to pick it up, into you personally, to pick it up.
Weird.
Yeah. Rookie mistake.
So it's doing all these funny things, isn't it?
What, Google Hangouts?
Yeah. I've just watched a couple of shows.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Okay, I've got it now.
I think they're in transition mode with it, aren't they? A bit. Still don't know what they're doing though with their new chat and whatever it's called.
No, I've heard nothing, Simon. So
no, my feeling is that they're just
gonna
that actually we carry on. This is Google Hangouts, and they'll transition it. You know, actually, what will happen is it won't die. It's that they'll transition us to something else. It's more like a sort of. The software, you know, what we use is only a small part of it, isn't it? You know, it's really the back end stuff. How you know, we all go into basically a gateway, you know, a virtual room, and whether they change that around and do something else on the back end is different to what we use to get in there. Well, as we've seen, you can use a lot of things to get in there. You know, I've seen Cheddar Kung Pao and Chris the Guitar Pit. They were using Skype the other day. But I had a conversation with Cheddar about it, and he said it's quite complicated because he had two cameras. I think he had two computers going, one between him and Chris, and then he had one for YouTube as well. That sounds a bit complicated. But anyway, guys, how are we?
Yeah, I'm good. And we've got who else have we got here? John Smith, also known as
the Doctor.
Carl. Carl. So, where are you, Simon? Where we normally are?
See, I'm here, which is over. See that? That's the sea, ladies and gentlemen. That's the sea. This is the coast of. I'm on the coast of southern Spain, about 30 miles up the coast from Gibraltar, in a place called Estepona, and I'm on my annual 2-week, more than 2 weeks actually. 16 days jaunt to Spain to have a holiday, and so far it's been lovely.
What was the trip in Italy all about?
Oh, that was my guitar. That was me playing my guitar. That was my guitar breaks thing. That was basically a week of playing guitar, nothing else. No taxi of dad or anything like that. It was just go to Italy for a week, play guitar with some professionals, learn some things, have a laugh. You know, with a lot of other guys. Let's face it, it's a guy's thing. And yeah, so that's a kind of thing to do on your own. That's not something to take the wife and the kids to. Caroline, I don't think would appreciate that very much. Although she'd like Italy, that would be fine. But she's not into the guitar playing much. The kids kept trying to badger me to come, and I kept saying, "You're not coming. We can come too, Dad. We don't need to do the guitar. You're not coming. Finished." So that was different. That was just me on my own. But this is family holiday, and we always do family holiday this time of year in Spain. And so I've had me and my two younger daughters have been here, and I've just saying so far, I've read the Bruce Springsteen autobiography, which I can recommend.
What's your thoughts on that, Simon?
Well, I can recommend it wholeheartedly. I think it's an amazing book, really. I mean, you know, I think the first thing about it is he pretty much wrote it himself. Good morning, Arvin. How you doing? Hope you're good. Yeah, I think the first thing is that you know, there's a lot of kind of ghost written, and you know, you can tell. I mean, you know, somebody's voice, but the way he does it. I mean, I like Bruce Springsteen a lot. He's one of my favorite people, but so I recognize the voice. You know, with that thing, you can hear the voice in your head, somebody talking, and you get that slightly kind of romantic kind of way of talking about things, so kind of. But yeah, really well written, really. And really interesting about, you know, because he started in the late 60s, you know, as a teenager, did nothing else but play the guitar. One of my favorite things is, you know, is that, and I don't know if you've seen, and this will also, have you seen the Springsteen on Broadway show that he did? No. You know, he spent a year doing Man Alive. That is an amazing one-man show, absolutely incredible thing. I mean, you've got to be into it. Yeah. But I think he starts off by saying, you know, I set myself up as, you know, the voice of blue-collar America. He said, I've never done a day's work in my life. I'm a charlatan, which is a tremendous line. But you can see, you know, that it's also true and gives a laugh as well. But that whole thing about all he ever wanted to do, you know, was he was going to be a musician. You know, sure. From the day he saw Elvis on the telly, on the Ed Sullivan Show, you know, and his mum got him an acoustic guitar, which he couldn't play at all, so he just used to hit it and stuff, you know. And he, for him, you know, he even then he could feel the power of just having this thing in his hand. Although he could play it, and he kind of stopped and went back to it a bit later. But growing up in late 60s, you know, early mid 60s. How old is he? He's 71. So he's 10 years older than me.
He looks
so
he's
yeah. Well, he's growing up in mid 60s, you know, America kind of thing, you know, early 60s America, just through the 60s in America, amazing kind of time of change, you know, youth change. He's in the vanguard of that youth change thing, you know, where it's not just you've got a job down the local Nescafe factory or whatever. And, you know, it was about possibilities, and, you know, and you saw Elvis and he saw the Beatles, you know, and Ed Sullivan. And, you know, and just, you know, the zeitgeist of that, you know, blowing his mind and saying, you know, that's what I'm doing, you know. Bob Dylan, you know, how does it feel? You know, I know it had a massive impact on him and stuff. So, but that growing up through the 60s, through the draft, through the Vietnam War, all that stuff, you know, and being in kind of local bands. You know, but the interesting thing, you know, he was in a band called Child Steel Mill? One of them, Steel Mill, I think. They were like a 3-piece. You know, in the late 60s, he was doing the Clapton thing, 3-piece. But they would in New
trio.
Jersey. Yeah, the
power. Was he playing guitar?
Yeah. You know, was he a guitar player? He was like, you know, the king of New Jersey. But the interesting thing, what he says, the interesting about that is that you could be the king of New Jersey. They could draw 3,000 people. They supported everybody who came through. We talk about the Grateful Dead just now.
Yeah.
Then, you know, all the people came, they supported him. Outside of New Jersey, he couldn't get arrested. You know, he'd spend his life, they drive to the West Coast to do, and then, you know, audition to do something, and then just not get anywhere. And he'd be like, how can I play for 3,000 people and not get anywhere? What's happening? So yeah, just go back and forth. You know, they don't have enough money to get petrol money, pile into 2 trucks, you know, whatever, with a gear, and traverse themselves 3,000 miles to the West Coast. Kind of, you know, hang about there for a bit.
Interesting you should say that, because, you know, Neil Young in his book Waging Heavy Peace, he said the same thing. They were just mucking around in Canada. He bought a hearse and they piled it up and they just drove to the West Coast, but a bit like Springsteen. So the West Coast was, you know, clearly where it was happening, eh?
Yes, completely. You know, and then he kind of went back and he decided he stopped doing the band thing, and then he started doing his own singer-songwriter thing, which is
why did he do that?
Well, because he started off. He had a kind of, you know, he had lots of bands, including. He had a sort of soul band, you know, a soul R&B band, you know, 10-piece kind of horn section, everything like that. But it's very difficult to pay a 10-piece band, you know. So he started also going, hey, because of course the late 60s, you know, we're talking about sort of, you know, 68, 69, 70, you know, it's singer-songwriter territory, you know. So he started doing that singer-songwriting at the same time as doing the band thing. Bands. Quite a lot of covers, made a lot of covers and stuff. Not much original material. Carl's strangling the cat, or feeding the cat.
He's feeding the cat.
Poor animal. You're harassing the cat, Carl. Leave it alone.
I'm doing my PCA.
dear. So anyway, so so he started the songwriter thing as a sort of because there are a lot of singer-songwriters, and that's how he got his record deal. He got his record deal because famously, his manager Mike Appel got him an audition with John Hammond. John Hammond, the guy who discovered Bob Dylan and Billie Holiday, and and they went to his office. I mean, it's a sort of unimaginable thing now. Good morning, Sonia. How you doing? They went to his office to audition, and he sits behind his desk, and okay, play something, kid. So you play a few songs, and on the strength of playing a few songs, he gets signed to CBS. And but he said, look, guys, I'm a band person. I have a band. These songs will stand on their own. You can play them on an acoustic guitar. But they're a band singer, so he got a band in them, and they kind of, made the first two records, which didn't do a huge amount, and then they made Born to Run. Yeah, and off they went.
Instant classic,
but an instant, massive, on the cover of Time and Newsweek at the same week. And he had that John Lando quote, I've seen the future of rock and roll. His name is Bruce Springsteen. not too much pressure then, but. An amazing, just a review of a gig that John Lando did as a journalist for Rolling Stone.
And he had to fight. I remember watching some Rolling Stone documentaries, and they were talking about the history of Rolling Stone, and they mentioned something along, and he had to fight to get that article or that review printed, Simon. If I'm correct, because I was saying, well, look, this guy. Who was he? I suppose I suppose at that time they had probably 50 gigs that they could have featured or spoken about, but this guy said no. This guy
is the one.
Yeah,
it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, so obviously John Lando went on to be his manager. Later on, brought him in and Born to Run, and kind of to do a bit of co-production and messing about. But but he he tells all those tales about trying to get ready, trying to get a band off the ground, how difficult it is. Now he just has to keep going, and it's the thing we all know. It's not only about your talent, it's actually more about your drive. How much have you got it burning inside you to succeed, and that actually, is more. When I think, he says it about himself, I am not a great musician. I am not a great singer, but I have a massive drive to carry on, to do the next thing. He says about the E Street Band, we're like a super bar band. We're like your local bar band, but but bigger, kind of thing. And I think that's completely true. I think that clear-eyed honesty about where you are and who you are.
He's like the Rolling Stones, Simon, and like Clapton. He's going to give up the music business when he's dead.
Oh, completely. Yeah. He will give up the music business. When they wheel him out in a box, because that's what he knows. And he will find. I mean, he's I think they're planning an E Street tour next year. And he'll be 72.
Simon, is there any regrets? Has he spoken about any regrets in his book that anything that he'd change?
Oh, I think, lots of, and inevitably those regrets center around, your relationships with people. Sure. Like, he put the E Street Band on hiatus for 20 years. Yes. And I think, that he gives you some insight into what he decided very early on that bands as democracies didn't work. And what he was going to do is he was going to be the leader of the band, and you guys are going to be the sidemen. You're going to service my vision of it. Yeah. I see. I mean,
no problem with that.
Well, it's very interesting that if that's your state, and I've been in a band like that as well, where really the lead singer and the lead guitarist set the tone of what we wanted to do, and then you either bought that and you said, okay, we're going to do that, and that's what we're going to do, and that's fine, and those people. But of course, if you're Miami Steve Van Zandt and you have something of a career of your own, you're a band, there is a tension there, between I'm being Bruce Springsteen's sideman and just how about me? How about I have and you have to find ways of doing it, and I think that was he Max Weinberg was on Conan O'Brien, wasn't he, for doing the drums on Conan O'Brien and stuff, but so I think there's a lot of regrets and about the way that, and he's very interesting about himself. I mean, he suffered from depression all throughout his life. Great waves of kind of black depression, which affected his relationships with with his bandmates, particularly and his wives as well. Although Patti Scarpa, I think is but and he talks movingly about those black periods. Where the only thing is to go out on your motorcycle and drive at 100 miles an hour is the only thing. Dangerously and kind of willfully. Sort of self-harming, if you like, in a metaphorical way. So I mean,
it's interesting that you should say. It's interesting you should say that about Bruce Springsteen, being the leader of the pack, because this guy here, Tom Petty, he did the same thing, didn't he? He got the record deal as an individual and said to the guys, look, he was hanging out with the remnants of Mudcrutch. And they were playing, and he goes, "Cheapers, this is a good band. Hey guys, I've got a recording contract. Do you want to be my band?" And they went along with it, and he set the tone because of previous experiences he had. Democracies and bands don't work.
That's right. But what happens is when you're in that situation, what he says happens is that the band members all come to you with their grievances and their things and, the luggage they've got and stuff like that. At one point he says, one of the band members comes and says, I think I need to be paid more money,
Yeah.
And he has to say to him.
That's a good question to ask the boss.
He's the boss, literally. But he had to go and say to him, go out and find somebody who gets paid as well as you do for being in my band. And he said, when you found them, you come and tell me. Until that day, if you look in the mirror, you'll see the person who gets paid the best in a band ever.
Did he name who that band member was?
No, he didn't. I wouldn't have expected him to. But and I think there were also, when you're in a band, and we know this from other bands, that at some point it's a gang of people that and he's picked up this gang. He's met Miami Steve Van Zandt on the Jersey Shore at clubs where he played as a teenager and stuff. Gary Talent, Clarence Clements, they're all of that. They're all in that space. Danny Frederici, the organ player. The two outsiders, Roy Bitton and Max Weinberg, but they're all a gang. It's a gang of blokes, going out and playing music. And then one day, it isn't a gang of blokes going out and playing music. It's a business. It becomes a business where people are, employed by that business to do things. They're employed by that business to make it. And you're a bloke at the top, going, Christ, I've now got an organisation to deal with. What? And my classic thing about that is of course the Eagles. That brilliant documentary about the Eagles, which I hope you've seen because it's brilliant. Where you can see that there is the Glenn Fry, Don Henley, I'm getting this right, for whom it's business. And then there's Don Felder, for whom it's a gang of blokes going out and playing. And they cannot reconcile the two things.
And then you add...
that's why he left, Don Felder, because he couldn't reconcile it.
And then you add the James Gang character, and he comes in there and he's shooting
Mr.
from
Joe
both
Walsh.
Barrels off both hips.
Yeah, Mr. Joe Walsh, But it's that thing, and I think every band goes through that. The Stones, the Stones are, brilliant. They went through that gang of blokes. Brian sadly dies. Is to get new people in. Then they get Prince Rupert of Lowenstein, or whatever it is, to come and start managing their business affairs, and it becomes Mick's interested in that. He went to the LSE. It becomes a business. It becomes how do you support not only the band members, but an organisation. You know, the Rolling Stones organisation, the Bruce Springsteen organisation. How do you support those things? You know, and how do you make them sell records, play gigs? You know,
yeah.
Go on, Carl. You were going to say?
Oh, just because we don't have much time. I'm not sure if Bruce Springsteen topic will be branched over 2 or 3 episodes, but I know a little bit about him. But in layman's terms, can I tell you what I know, and then maybe you could piggyback off that?
Yeah.
Because what we could do is just do some bullet points, because he has had an extensive career. And I'll give you a little bit of what I know, and then you can just basically, you and Andrew can add to that, if you like. Is that all right?
Yeah. Go on.
Go on. Go for it.
Okay, so basically, you mentioned before New Jersey, blue collar, and you mentioned the word gangs. There was another band called the South Side, Johnny the South Side.
Yeah, Acolytes, yeah.
And they're just amazing bands. There's a whole bunch of them in the late 70s. But there was one particular album he did before Born to Run.
Morning, Phil.
Sorry?
Sorry, Phil Mosley Music has joined. Good morning, Phil.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Album he did before Born to Run.
What, the Wild Innocent E Street Shuffle or Greetings from
that's
Bright, New Jersey?
Which is a bona fide classic. And then a lot of people don't know this. A lot of people, his initial fan base, I think, was all Jewish. They was Bruce Springsteen. But
really?
People forgot that he's quarter Dutch, quarter Scottish, and half English. And what I know is he's Catholic, a Catholic boy.
Oh yeah.
He's not. He's the Springsteen, but he's half Irish.
Half Irish, Dutch as well.
His mother comes from an Irish family, and his father comes from an Italian family. I don't know whether Springsteen, but the Springsteen must be German, I think. But yeah,
and Dutch as well, I'm led to believe.
Yeah.
And then obviously you had the big, as the word you like, the Born to Run moment. But he did some classic albums in the 80s. One particular was called Nebraska.
Yeah,
Nebraska solo acoustic.
All acoustic, and he recorded it at night. And,
in his garage.
And there's another album.
4-track Tascam.
Yeah, another album he did where he's leaning on a white car. It's a Tunnel of Love.
Yeah, Tunnel of Love.
Yes.
Yeah. And then carrying on through, basically, I think that he's an amazing artist in the sense he's not my cup of tea, but he's about as American as apple pie. They love him.
Yes.
You mentioned the word blue collar. I mean, a friend of mine went to see him at Ashbury Park in New Jersey 4 times. He said, you haven't seen Bruce till you see him in his hometown.
Really? 4 times?
Yeah. And he's a hardcore Kool-Aid drinking, bleeding liberal. He's democratic. He's a
Democrat.
He's a voice for the Democrat Party, isn't he? Massive voice.
He played at President Obama's inauguration and supported him doing things. Yeah.
And what I like about Bruce, and I'll close out with this, is that we mentioned about the Stones, and we talked about, we had a laugh, the 3 little 3-chord wonders. Bruce doesn't have a wide vocabulary of song arrangements. He's very simple, very meat and potatoes, but you can tell that the band works around his songwriting prowess. I think he's a fascinating, amazing songwriter. And I'm glad you mentioned Tom Petty, but I think he's similar to Neil Young, but you can't help but think that he's massively influenced by Bob Dylan.
So it would be Neil Young, Bob Dylan, and Bruce Springsteen. That'd be the North American cool cats, wouldn't they? The 3 kings.
As far as singer, songwriter, acoustic, a body of work, classic albums, a lot of crap in there also. But I just can't help but think, when I think of Bruce, I think of Bob Dylan for some reason.
Wow.
I think that's true.
And we can go even deeper. Bob Dylan was influenced by Woody Guthrie and just basically blue collar guys, Oklahoma, droughts, fighting for the common man.
That's true, and there's all sorts of one of Bruce Springsteen's epiphanal, if that's a word, moments of epiphany was reading Joe Klein's biography of Woody Guthrie. It's called A Life, and this is in 1979, 1980, and when I saw him in 81 on the River Tour, and he was playing This Land Is Your Land, but as a kind of, the start of his kind of, as you say, that kind of blue collar, that odyssey about politicizing the working man, if you like, and seeing your country.
The Ghost of
go
Tom
downhill.
Joad is
it's
a
later.
fantastic album.
That's 90s. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah,
brilliant album.
I think all of his records have merit. Some merit. Even the ones where it's a bit 3-starish, but that's fine. You have a career. Not everything, not everything is a 5-star. Born to Run, Born in the USA kind of thing.
Born in the USA was huge here in New Zealand, Simon.
Huge everywhere.
It was just everywhere. The video Dancing in the Dark was on constant repeat on the New Zealand music programs. It was just everywhere. If you went out and had a few drinks, every third song was Dancing in the Dark.
Yeah. But also the other thing that happened, of course, in the 80s was he read Ron Kovic's book, Born in the USA? No, Born on the 4th of July.
4th of July, yeah.
Which is about he's a Vietnam vet, Ron Kovic. So he met him, and and then he started getting involved in that. Really, the vets thing. Kind of trying to.
Simon, his lyrics. I remember buying that album, and they had the lyrics and the sleeve. So I'm not going to sing it, but born down in a dead man's town. The first kicks you took is when you hit the ground.
Hit the ground. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
But
I had a brother at Khe-Sanh fighting off the Viet Cong. Wow.
Yeah. But what he says about that song is that basically the verses are protest verses.
Yeah.
And then the chorus is a kind of, declamatory kind of, Born in the USA is kind of that. Yeah. I think about, wave from, and they're a kind of opposites in a sense.
Do you think Bon Jovi was influenced by Bruce Springsteen? Johnny used to work
only
on
a bit.
Yeah. Union man on strike. He's down on his luck. Yeah.
Hardly at all.
We're laughing and giggling, but it's good. We know the lyrics. It's pretty good stuff.
Speaking of Born in the USA, that's the only album I own, and I'm actually a terrible fan. I should be a better fan.
Me too.
I love that album.
I've got 2 albums. I've got the Ghost of Tom Joad and that.
Okay, I should be a better fan. I should have bought Nebraska. I had at one time owned Born to Run, but Born in the USA is it's a monster masterpiece.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. The other one. My introduction, my first album is Darkness on the Edge of Town. Which is probably my favourite Bruce Springsteen record.
Yeah.
I mean, I bought it first. It came out in '77. Kind of, that kind of very hard, very kind of, focused on those tough songs about people's lives and stuff. Struck a chord. I don't know why. Struck a chord with me. I'm not a blue collar person at all. It's bizarre, but but it struck a real chord with me, that, and I love that record. I still love that record. It's probably my favourite one, Darkness on the Edge of Town, because it's the first one you buy. I'm 20 years old, 19 years old. Yeah. I'd recommend that as a but in a sense that's his kind of punk record, in a way. You could tell there are influences of punk in that record. That picking up on the Clash and what's going on in London.
And reading his book, wave. Simon, tell me about his infatuation with the Telecaster.
That's an interesting point.
Not
particularly. I mean, he just said that he bought. I mean, he had a variety of guitars before that, and I don't think they're all Telecasters. And he had he did the usual thing that we all went through. He had terrible guitars, you know, as I said, he had an acoustic that he couldn't play, and then he got a terrible guitar, and you know, knew nothing about, you know, intonation or setting up or anything like that. Gradually learn, you know, and get, but he never had any money. See, he's a kid, he never had any real money to, you know, you know, you know, he said, if, you know, we played in Steel Mill, but it was when, you know, he played to 3,000 people, you know, they had a lot of money for that, and that would pay for them for the next 6 months. I don't think he kind of invested it in loads of gear. He's not, I mean, I think that he bought some nice guitars in the 80s. He said, he makes a point, he said, in the 80s, I finally bought some nice guitars, you know, because I could afford them.
But he loves playing
Gibson
acoustics, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's got his Gibson acoustics and stuff. But you know, that Esquire he got was a kind of mongrel guitar, I think. You know, it's got
really?
You know, neck. Yeah, I don't think it's a, you know, I don't think it's a particularly special guitar. It's special because it's his, you know, and it's one of those things, you know, it's a bit like Keith Richards and Mick Allber, you know. You know, you make it special because of its association with you and kind of, but I don't think so. He just went out to go out and buy an electric guitar. So, you know, went out and bought an electric guitar and managed to hold on to it for 40 years or whatever it is, you know. But no, not particularly you know, I mean, I think they, you know, he doesn't really talk about that. That's not what he talks about in there at all. He talks about the process of songwriting, himself as a person, you know, who growth, you know, his life, what he's done, you know, the major points in it and stuff, and you know, after, you know, the kind of his relationship with his mum, with his father and his mum, and his, you know, his family and stuff, and you know, his depression, and he's obviously battled depression a lot, you know, throughout his life.
That guitar would get $1 million, Simon, if he sold it.
It would, yeah. The Telecaster and the Marshalls, yeah. That's his. Yeah, that's interesting. That's his sound. But there's not really anything about gear. There's nothing in it for the gear nerd.
so can I just ask you guys something? You know, I remember when I first bought that album, Born in the USA. I walked into town and I bought that out with the U2's Joshua Tree at the same time. And I remember taking both those albums home, going, which one am I going to play first? You know, that was the big question, man. Which album are you going to throw on the turntable? I think it was Bruce Springsteen. Anyway, but what amazed me about that album, and this is back in 1986.
85.
85.
84.
Okay, 84. Okay, jeepers. Okay, a long time ago. So I remember putting that on the turntable and listening to it, but I couldn't hear any guitar. I remember going, wow. And then you put on the Joshua Tree, and clearly you can hear the guitar. So I didn't know anything much about this wall of sound thing that, you know, Bruce Springsteen was soon to be famous for. Was he famous for that at that time? The wall of sound?
Born to Run.
One of the reasons why I don't own his albums is he was unfortunately part of that 80s big drum sound, which I don't like. If you listen to Glory Days, it's very heavy synthesizer, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, some of them have.
Yeah.
If you don't mind running through some of those songs on Born in the USA, because
I'll get it up and I'll tell you what.
A lot of people don't know this. He wrote that song "Fire," which we talked about Robert Gordon and Point.
Love. Yep.
So
and Because the Night as well, of course, Patti Smith.
Yeah, but unfortunately, when you own a good stereo, which I've had in the past, and you put that particular album on, it's a big room sound.
Okay, Carl. So you've got Born in the USA, Cover Me, Darlington County, which is pretty cool. Working on the Highway, Downtown Train, which is a great song. I'm on Fire, which is outstanding. No Surrender. Bobby Jean, I can't remember that one. I'm Going Down, I can remember that. Glory Days.
Yes.
Dancing in the Dark, and My Hometown Man, which is just brilliant.
Lovely song.
I was 8 years old, running with a dime in my hand.
Yeah.
You know, like, fantastic, man.
And when you mentioned Dancing in the Dark, I remember the video clip clearly, because like Andrew was saying, Simon, and even as a kid, I remember you flick on the TV and there was just a Bruce Springsteen Bruce Springsteen video or song happening.
Yeah.
By the way, my uncle had that poster, Born in USA poster. Levi jeans, trucker's cap, white t-shirt, flag.
That one there. Can you see it?
Yeah. See.
But the video too, I'm on fire, and he's going around to that girl's place right at the end.
Yeah, with the keys.
Just awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's pretty cool. It certainly is a highlight in my life, buying that album and listening to it. Yeah, certainly. Great album.
Guitar solo on Cover Me. That seems hard to believe. Does he play any lead, Simon?
No.
Yeah, there are. Well, but the interesting part about, in fact, what you could say about all his records is that I mean, what you said earlier. The interesting part is that you have the wall of sound, which is a Phil Spector thing, of course, and that's what he based it on. That's what he wants. That integration of everything together, so that you get particularly you'd say the major solo instrument on most Bruce is Clarence Clemens saxophone. Actually, they have saxophone.
So Simon,
solos.
Is that something that Bruce brought into the studio himself? Is that something that Bruce wanted? It wasn't the producer.
No. Well, because remember, Bruce Springsteen co-produced. He knew what he wanted from the off.
Oh, okay.
From his first record, I mean, he had a fight with the record for his first record because they said, you're a Bob Dylan, clone. He said, no, I've got a band. I'm having the band in. We're doing the band. Okay. Whoa, what? A pre-Clarence Clemens, but yeah, I think that you're right in that even on those records, what you remember is the sax solo. And probably the piano stuff more than you remember the sort of wild guitar solos. And I think he just didn't do. I mean, he when he was doing that 3-piece, when he was in his teens.
Did he have Nils Lofgren in his band?
Yeah, Nils Lofgren's still in his band. Nils Lofgren replaced Miami Steve Van Zandt. Miami Steve Van Zandt left in the 80s before Born in the USA.
Van Zandt's number one hero was Keith Richards.
Absolutely.
Along with Nils Lofgren,
yeah, that's right. So, well, of course, the Nils Lofgren with his "Keith Don't Go" song,
yes.
Bruce Springsteen got Nils Lofgren to replace Miami Steve Van Zandt in the.
And if you want to get slightly off topic, and I'll just say it once, I won't say it again. If you want to really dissect into Nils Lofgren's incredible guitar playing, he was in a band called Grin, a 3-piece.
Yes,
that's right. Yeah, Green. With his brother.
2 albums only.
And he hung out with Neil Young too.
Yeah.
Hey,
Simon, I'd like to ask you a question. Because obviously he's had a long career, Bruce, along with Neil and Bob Dylan. And a friend of mine brought up a good point. He says, if you want to be a songwriter, it's easy. Just write about love. And I thought that's an interesting point because most waffly songs are pop songs about love. How would Bruce be creative by making songwriting original over his storied career?
I think what he's done is he's had a cast of characters, basically, and what he's done the whole career, if you play everything, and you start off, I think you probably discount I think Born to Run is where it really starts, but you have this cast of characters, and then you watch them grow up and mature. So you watch them with their dreams, and they're and then they get a bit crushed, and but they're still carrying on. And then what happens to them, and you can take that through all these albums. I think there are the same characters reappear, and different stages in their lives. And I think that you're right. He does write about the classic stuff, but it's what he hangs it on. The effect it has on people's lives. So if you're talking about, if you're talking about Go's latest Wrecking Ball, which is in 2010, which is quite, which is all about, the financial crisis, crash and the fact that, that his local towns, people lost their jobs like that because factories closed and, things are happening. That's what he hangs it on, and people's loves and their lives, with this backdrop of what's happening in the world. And I think that is the thread that ties everything together. Of his, of his songs. It's there in Nebraska. It's there in people who lost their jobs, lost everything, lost hope. What do they do? Kind of thing.
Do you think he's really authentic in that, or he knows that 60% of America is white, blue collar, and he's basically using that as his marketing commercial base? Is he authentic?
I don't think it's as cynical as that. I think it's just where you are and what you have as an idea. When you start off and you're playing, you start off in your first album. You just start, don't you? Have songs, and you play them and you record them. And then you do another one, and you're doing Spirits of the Night stuff. And then you arrive, you go, all right, then you start, because he's obviously a deep thinking person. You start thinking, what am I trying to say? What am I trying to do? Where, who are these characters? So you'd start with Born to Run, and the thing about Born to Run is it's a kind of spread over 24 hours, so it starts off with which is kind of, full of hope and optimism and, start of the day, a screen door slams, Mary's dressmaker, it's that kind of brilliant, breezy optimism to start your day kind of thing. And, where do those people, the people in Thunder Road, the people in, working, and where do they go? What do they do next? They arrive at Dance on the Edge of Town.
I'd like to go slightly off topic.
There's no such thing, is there?
There's a couple of guys that I'll mention that I've been obviously surrounded by a lot of this, what they call Americana music. I wouldn't say Bruce is mainstream, but because he's obviously struck a chord, the word you mentioned, he is nationwide and worldwide. But who was that guy, Copperfield Road?
John Cougar Mellencamp.
No, Copperfield Road.
Was it not?
Steve Earle.
Steve Earle.
So
So that's kind of like, I imagine Steve Earle would have been influenced by Bruce a little bit, because when you're actually a bona fide songwriter, you're in another level of musicianship as far as I'm concerned. There's one guy in particular who I really like, who actually did not come from a poor background. But the way he wrote songs, and he was never successful, but he's underground and he is just a legend, a classic, is Townes Van Zandt.
Absolutely.
Yeah, completely.
So he came from an oil background.
So it's interesting that you should mention that, because Earl, he named his son Townes Van Zandt. He named his son Steve Earle. Steve Earle's named his son, who's a country musician in his own accord. Yeah, own right. Yeah. So sorry for interrupting.
That's all right. No, that's
carry on, because you're on to something.
Because they all connect. All these points connect. But
sure.
I'd like to close out with basically what I liked about Townes, and there's certain people that can do this when they write a song, is they create imagery. Like, for example, I've forgotten a song, but when I'm listening to it, I feel like I'm at the truck stop, and I feel like there's hopelessness all around me. And that's the mark of a clever songwriter, where they take you away. And I call it imagery. Yeah. They draw you in, and they take you, like a good movie, take you a certain place where it's like, wow, that is spooky, or that's real, or that's hard, or I can feel his pain, or I've been there, or
yeah.
I mentioned the word before, authentic.
That Born in the USA album, I remember hearing that, thinking exactly what you did. Rambo had just come out, or Rambo 2, so Vietnam vets were in the news. They were talking about Vietnam rights. And then that song comes along and, nails that imagery that you think is so essential to a songwriter. I want to add something a little bit more to that, Carl, because one of the things that I picked up on in an interview with a guy a couple of months ago about Bruce Springsteen is that the guy was saying that Bruce Springsteen is supposed to be an icon of the working class, blue collar America. And if you look at the statistics over the recent election, and I hate to talk about politics, okay, so I don't want to, I don't want to turn.
Trump.
Listen. I just want to make an observation. I don't want to get into politics.
Boris Johnson, Brexit.
but what the guy was alluding to was that who voted for the current president of the United States of America, and this president is getting these people back to work. Now, I'm not saying that. I'm just repeating something I've read. So make that quite clear. This is not Andrew's opinion. So don't attack me in the comments or attack me in the chat. But it's an observation that I think we need to talk about if we're doing some archaeology.
And I like how you mentioned Rambo, because when I think of Bruce Springsteen in New Jersey, even though Rocky was from Philadelphia, I just think of those grimy, cold, working class towns. It's once again. So who then is Bruce Springsteen talking to now? If it's not the people that voted for the current president, who's he talking to?
I think that's a really good question. I think you're right. That I think that's probably a question he asked himself. In many ways, I've been writing about the working man and the effects of the economy. As we said, the economic crash in 2008. Previous to that, things that happen in your town as they change. Factories close, jobs go to other countries because it's cheaper to produce things in China than it is in America, and all those things. And then, you're right, and then your audience, or a proportion of your audience, then votes for Donald Trump. And that's a very interesting dichotomy. It's an almost inevitable artistic dichotomy there. In between the artist and what the artist does, and his background, and then what actually happens. Reflecting what actually happens, and I think there's probably, that it can be down to, we've seen this, that if somebody comes along and, and I think we're daring to be political. I think we're in the age of where experts and the truth come second place to slogans and
Yeah, well, I like how Andrew mentioned the Joshua Tree, because unfortunately you two fall into the same trap.
Yeah,
and I like how you mentioned the word dichotomy. You beat me to it, but I'll beat you. I'll go one step further. Paradox. Paradox.
Yeah.
Paradox of these two bands, and I think the Stones are clever enough now to be basically just a typical setlist corporate band. But the paradox dichotomy is, here we have Bono, who's saving the world and going to Africa and hanging out with George Clooney on private jets. Here we have Bruce Springsteen, very wealthy. How can them in their 50s, 60s, 70s, after all this amazing success, still relate to the working man?
Good point.
I think it's two things. I'd say, having just read his biography, two things I take from it are, one,
hey Mike, thanks for joining us.
Is the hi Mike, how you doing? One is, I think, that is a good old fashioned thing called research. You go out and you research. So you read books. And I think that Bruce Springsteen's blue collar, is, although he says himself never done a day's work in his life. He lived in a very working class area with working class parents. His mother was a legal secretary, and his father did all manner of jobs. Bus driving, working in the factories, whatever else it was.
So he's his career is possibly living vicariously through his father.
Yeah. Well, it's I wouldn't say living vicariously. What it is a reflection of his father's experience.
That's why I like Townes Van Zandt a lot, because I love Bruce, but Townes turned his back on a privileged background and really appealed to the desperation of forget about blue collar. He went right into the alleys, the truck stops, the trailer parks. Trailer parks is even lower than blue collar.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah. So I think, you know, that, as I said, the first thing I think is research, and I also think that if you go out, and he seems to go out a lot, like he's got some mates who kind of, they have a garage and stuff, you know, but they'll go out and go on kind of 2-week motorbike adventures and stuff, you know, drive around the country kind of thing. So I think that that in a sense it's a research, but it's a kind of, you know, you go out and you see things, don't you? You know, you stop at places, you get in conversations with people in bars, whatever, you know, and I don't think he's afraid of going out and, you know, being, you know, yeah, as you say, very rich. But, you know, you go out on your motorbike like lots of Americans do, you know, and, you know, go up into the mountains and kind of, you know, cruise about, spend 2 weeks away kind of just doing that stuff, you know. And that's about research. That's about immersing yourself in.
There's a history of American guys doing that, Simon. You know, Graham Parsons did that too, didn't he? He turned his back on a family fortune and catering. Yeah. Mike Bloomfield did the same thing. You know, turned his back on that and wanted to go to Chicago and live this authenticity that they knew that they couldn't taste in the life that they were born into.
No, and I think it's a good point. Can you? I mean, it's a good point. The question is, can you write authentically about something that isn't you?
Yeah,
and I think
I'm glad you asked that question.
Don't you think? I mean, I think that Bruce Springsteen. That is the central question about Bruce Springsteen. Can he write about? Which is what Carl's just said. Can he write about blue collar, working class America, whilst not being blue collar and working class? You can argue about whether you can.
I'll take it one step further. Yes, he can, and yes, he should do, because he comes from that, and he's going to go and do the research that we all said is crucial about turning your back on whatever and going to live in the. What did you say, Carl? The truck stops, what is it? The trailer parks. Yeah. He's going to live in the trailer parks. And if you present us with an album, if you present us with a song, leave it at that. Don't jump on social media and then give us a political interpretation of what you've done, because that spoils it for me.
Yeah.
Give me the imagery. Give me the music, and I'll make my mind up.
Right. Isn't that? Don't you think that he's from that era where you write a song and it might mean one thing to you, but when somebody else hears it, it means something completely different to them. And the art of it is, as you just said, is not to place your meaning. It's a classic Bob Dylan thing, isn't it? It's it can mean whatever you want it to mean. And he obviously has a meaning for it.
My small take on it, basically, if you want to be a successful musician or band, you've got to have a platform that you begin with. That's your base that you branch out on. Rolling Stones, obviously blues. Bruce Springsteen, working class, New Jersey town. John Cougar Mellencamp, the Midwest.
Yep.
That's their foundation.
Completely.
That's what they go back to. That's what their
Steve Earle, country music.
Yes, Townes Van Zandt, the depths of despair of Texas. Bob Dylan channeled Woody Guthrie's energy in unions and white collar crime and bosses.
Came from a wealthy family.
Wage rights and
Yes, that's true.
How old was Bob Dylan when he left home? 15 or 16? Turned his back.
Did he come from a wealthy family? Did he?
Yeah.
Well, middle class family for sure.
Minnesota.
Yeah. They owned a shop or something like that. Maybe. But he turned his back.
Yeah, middle class for sure. But
because those guys probably wouldn't survive these days. They'd be scrutinised. They'd be, they'd have been asked questions left, right, centre
about everything.
Bob Dylan particularly had a completely mythological past that he made up. I've been riding the trains and I've been doing this. Like, no, you didn't, Bob. You went to college face facts, stole your mate's records, and kind of, and then, he didn't sort of, went to New York to kind of, and hitched himself to, the folk scene a bit, But before that, he played rock and roll stuff,
and New York and poetry and
and you hitch yourself to the folk thing, in Dylan. Yeah, you've got to be careful with some of Bob's. But these days, you just look it all up on Wikipedia, and you couldn't. So
why is it that? Why is it these Americans can do that so well? These guys. Why are they so good at painting pictures for us?
I can tell you now. There's 50. Is there 50 states? 52 states, right?
Hawaii 50. 50 states.
It's 50 states. Yeah, I just didn't. There was an Obama.
Okay.
50 states. Sorry, there's 48 in Alaska and Hawaii. 49 and 58.
The teleprompter was wrong.
Every state has its own personality. So you travel one state to the next. It's almost like a mini country.
Wow.
So what happens is these guys travel a lot. You mentioned the West Coast Sound, Hollywood, lights, camera, action, New York, lights, camera, action, Midwest, nothing. You can basically just pick a state and absorb that culture.
So it's the vastness of America makes it great for being a subject to sing about.
Yep. Nebraska, and it's the album Nebraska. Bruce Springsteen's not from Nebraska.
No.
No. But it's just but you're right. It's an evocation of a kind of that wide open spaces and the kind of
John Cougar Mellencamp. He was the Indiana boy.
Yes, he was. Yeah. But I think that you're right, Carl. That Texas is 4 times the size of the UK, kind of thing. And you travel around the UK, and I go 100 miles. I saw someone like Phil would agree with us. That he lives 250 miles, 300 miles away from me.
Yeah. A lot of those guys were northern singers. John Prine, who really Boz Skaggs, who really tried to adopt the southern mindset too. They were infatuated with the South.
Yeah.
So that just shows you the vastness, the Mason-Dixie line.
Yes, and you're right, and I presume all that going back and forth that Bruce Springsteen did. I mean, he's basically like packing up his gear and going to the West Coast, and then fading, and then coming back again. Because his parents left him there when he was about 18. I think we're moving to the West Coast, and off they went, leaving him there, renting the house that they lived in.
Wouldn't it be embarrassing if Bruce was 19, singing about struggles, blue collar, and some reporter followed him home and he went into a gated community and was what the hell are you doing?
You might get called. You might get called out for your authenticity then. But I think it's a. But I mean, what's interesting about Bruce Springsteen, he ends up living now as a sort of multi-millionaire in the place where he grew up. I mean, he has a farm, on the outskirts of Freehold, New Jersey, which is where he grew up. It's like, he went away about 10 yards.
So Simon, has he got children?
He has 3 children. He's got 2 boys and a girl. And one of them is Sam, the oldest one, Sam. He's a fireman. So he's a firefighter. Jessica, she's an international show jumper.
Wow.
She does show jumping, horses.
Yeah. And anyone in the music industry?
Well, the youngest one, Evan, I think he's in the music industry. He does producing and stuff. Yeah. So one of them has has followed in his footsteps, but not quite really in the same way.
But
I don't think he's forced them.
I like Bruce. I think he's authentic.
Oh yeah.
I like Neil Young, John Cougar.
Yep.
Was okay, but I think these guys really believe in the place that they're trying to project.
Yeah, but I'm going to take it one step further again too, buddy, and say that this is the last of that generation. We've spoken about this a few times, guys. A few times, You know, when Clapton goes and Keith goes and Mick, you know, when these guys go, you know, that's the end of rock and roll. And you have to situate Bruce Springsteen and Bob Dylan in rock and roll, don't you? And that whole yeah.
His first album was 73, is that right?
Yeah. Greetings from Raspberry Park, New Jersey.
73 to 2019. I'm 42, born 76. 42 plus
Don't look
3.
a day over 30.
45 years spanning career.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Bluston Jeeba or Lords having a career of 45 years?
Taylor Swift. No.
Taylor Swift.
Swifty.
I don't even know their names because they come and go so quick.
Who knows? It's very good.
It's just one song that they want.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Bruce Springsteen when he came to New Zealand? He covered a Lord song. If you look on the internet,
Royals. Yeah.
Actually, is it Royals who covered? Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to say one thing about Bruce. This disappointed me. He said something about Kanye West is amazing. What the hell are you on, Bruce?
I think he was drunk. I think Bruce was drunk.
Bourbon. Too much bourbon. I'm voting for too much bourbon. Did he really? Anyway.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
That was
collaboration too, I think, or there was talks of it.
Oh.
Everyone's allowed their crazy moments.
yeah.
Well, I think who was Mick with? Mick was with Bruno Mars or something, or Adam Levine. So yeah,
Taylor Swift.
Ugh. Christina Aguilera. Live with me.
Yeah.
Let's not start
seriously. Seriously though, you know these guys are legends, and they are the last of a generation of storytellers.
Yes.
That said something of any significance. You know, we've mentioned it before lots of times. The Rolling Stones, they were talking to a generation. Their albums meant something to a generation of people. You know, Street Fighting Man, if you were a communist, Street Fighting Man meant something to you. And if you were a pacifist, it meant something to you. And, you know, the Rolling Stones went to great lengths to avoid making a position on that song. You know,
I think Andrew's hit the nail on the head. I think the keynote or the key word for tonight, and we've mentioned Townes Van Zandt, Steve Earle, Bob Dylan, Woody Guthrie, obviously Bruce Springsteen, John Prine, Neil Young, a whole host, even to a way lesser extent, Bon Jovi. But the word storyteller. How can you convey a proper story and make people believe it?
Yeah, with characters and with an arc and with the start, the middle, and an end and stuff like that. I just wanted to make a point about what interests me is that of course, all those guys in the 60s, we've been talking about authenticity as well. You know, all those guys like the Rolling Stones. How do you go from being at the LSU, you know, mix at the London School of Economics to saying I am an authentic blues person. I can play blues authentically. You know, because there's a gap, isn't there, between who you actually, where you come from, who you are. I mean, I think they do it fine. I mean, I'm not arguing whether they did it or not, but to me, that's that. How do you make yourself authentic when you don't come from Chicago?
I think that. Yeah.
Carl.
Oh, just real quickly, and I've thought about that a lot, and I've read a lot of interviews, a lot of quotes, and there's a famous Muddy Waters quote about saying something about you can't get the real deep blues unless you go to church. But I personally believe that someone can get a pass if they come from a privileged background, if they've got something sincere to offer. Sure. I personally think, I mean, let's say that you did come from a hard, tough upbringing and you're successful. You're eventually going to be wealthy. I can't imagine someone being poor, wanting to sing about poor stuff, wanting to remain poor. That's the dichotomy. So I think it's the way how you carry yourself,
Yeah. No, I mean, you know, I wasn't. There was no criticism implied in the Stones. You know, it's just
No.
an interesting point about
I'm on your side. I'm thinking to
about
myself.
that.
But I've heard a lot of these blues
Yeah,
guys.
and so am I. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of these blues guys saying, you know what, John Mayer can feel the blues. It pains me to say that, but some of them say that, you know.
Yeah.
But,
well, going back to what you said before about
they need those guys. I mean, Muddy and Howling Wolf and a lot of those guys would have been succumbed to playing Chicago clubs the rest of their life and not going on tours. All of a sudden, not only they're going on tours, but they're headlining major rock acts, you know? So
The authenticity, though, Carl, comes from studying the subject. You know, the Rolling Stones studied these blues guys. They studied Robert Johnson and Muddy Waters. They would spend hours studying and applying the lessons that they were learning into their own music. And it's a little bit like John Mayer. John Mayer did the same thing. He studied Stevie Ray Vaughan. Kenny Wayne Shepherd did the same thing. These guys, you know, studied. So they come out at least with some authenticity because they've got something behind them that guys like us, you know, can relate to. And you know, I agree with you about John Mayer. It pains me to admit that he's a blues man because in his catalogue he's got some songs like Your Body is a Wonderland, and that means nothing to me. But that John Mayer trio album that he did with it's fantastic.
Well, the unfortunate thing is if John Mayer did a blues album, he wouldn't sell any records, even though he'd enjoy doing it. But if he wrote My Body is a Wonderland and appeals to 100 million 16-year-old girls,
when he turns 45, he will. He'll become a blues artist.
I only know one John Mayer song, and that's "Slow Dancing in a Burning Room." Other than that, I am lost with the John Mayer experience.
That's a good song. That's a good.
What I do if I get caught out talking about John Mayer around a whole bunch of blues enthusiasts, I said, no, I meant John Mayer.
Yeah, I've said that too.
Yeah, you misheard me. Yeah, John Mayer, not John Mayer.
John Mayer and Eric, with Eric Clapton. What? Who?
I'll just tell you the story that Bruce Springsteen he got a call from Mick Jagger that they were playing in New Jersey, and he got a call from Mick Jagger, and he said, "Come and play on Tumbling Dice, come and sing. You know, we'll do alternate verses kind of thing." So he said that. He said, "Come down. They've booked a rehearsal space or something." So he went down to the Stones rehearsal space, and he said, basically, you go in. He says, no entourage, no people around. You know, it's like just go in. He said, it's like a pub band. He said, there's some little Fender amps at the back around the drum kit. And he said, then anyone are? He said, they'll plug in. He said, he said, there was the magic. Straight off, he said, those guys are just plugged in. Keith and Charlie, you know, they look at each other. That thing we talked about, you know.
Yeah.
And off they go. You know, off they go. You know, and it's like he said, I was standing there. He said, you know, the hairs are standing on my back of my neck. You know, he said they're unbelievable in that little space, just this little band. You know, and what they've got, this kind of magic that they've got. That is just there in this room.
And that comes from years of gelling. Hey, gelling. You mentioned the word gang. Yeah. You know, a band's like a gang, you know, the same guys in the same band doing the same thing. And that's what's great. That's the magic that was initially there. That's just been basically enhanced.
He said it was amazing, you know.
So getting back to Bruce real quick, I unfortunately have to get going, but I've always been marveled, amazed by how good he looks. He was never a drinker or a druggie.
Never took drugs. He's never taken drugs. Yeah. And he didn't drink at all till he was about in his mid-20s. He just swore off it. I think he saw a lot of acid casualties and stuff like that. And I think that what he says is that basically he's quite a controlling person and, you know, and wanted to be in control of himself. So basically he didn't drink at all. You know, all through his teens and about never drank. You know, I think later on, you know, you get nowadays he'll have a beer or a or a bourbon or something, and kind of. But yeah, I think through his young, but never took drugs ever.
And do you
I
find?
think he felt.
I enjoy his interviews. I find him quite humble. Is he?
Yeah,
is he
yeah,
that way
very.
inclined?
I think that's one of the things you get from his book. You know that when he says a lot. I'm not a great singer. I've just had to be a singer. It's one of those things where you may not be great at it, but you get forced into it. Like he was in a
Sure.
band with his, and he was in a band with a better singer. But then he got in a band, a three-piece band. It's like, well, you're the guitar player, you're the singer, so you just sing. And then all of a sudden, 10 years have gone past, and you're a singer. You have to, because you're writing your own songs. Who else
So
is going to sing them?
He learned to sing by being a singer in a band, Simon.
Yeah, but by singing about, but also by studying great singers, that he liked and stuff. But he doesn't consider himself to be a great singer. He says I'm a bar band shouter. I can it. And he says there's nothing. He said at one point he says, "No, but there is nothing more humbling than hearing yourself on tape singing."
Can I ask you one more question, Simon, before I go?
Yeah.
And I've actually really enjoyed this Bruce Springsteen topic because, like Andrew, I only own one, maybe two albums, but
I've got them all.
I've always found him fascinating, and my uncles have maybe 2/3 of his collection. Did he, with musical arrangements and singing and songwriting, did he collaborate with any members of the band, or was he a sole songwriter, or who did the arrangements?
Pretty much, he wrote them all himself.
Wow.
Now, in terms of arrangements, I think that it goes from I've got a song on the acoustic guitar in my early days, and I bring it to the studio, and then people will put their stuff on it, and I think that started. But also, I think he's also got a very clear vision in his head. I think always had about what those songs should sound like.
Yep.
The parts and stuff like that. So I know that the saxophone solos, him and Clarence, they would do them together, phrase by phrase.
Yeah.
And he was very involved at that detailed level about play that bit now, play another bit, and kind of you put them together. These phrases, the phrases that he liked. So very involved in production arrangements. Although there's a famous story of on Born to Run. I think it's Meeting Across the River, where they've got a horn section. They've got the Brecker brothers, Michael and Randy Brecker, who are like, and I think Wynton Marsalis even. I think like top class jazz guys, right? And they're in a studio, and Miami Steve Van Sant goes into the studio and whistles the parts that he wants them to play, and they're like going, "Who the heck is this guy with a bloody what really?" But anyway, they do it. It's really good. But I think Steve Van Sant particularly has had some some say in those things because he's his old mate, Steve Van Sant, and if there's a lovely thing, if anybody you need people around who will tell you the truth. There's a brilliant thing. Have you seen him doing It Just Go to Show You Never Can Tell? The Chuck Berry song. C'est la vie, say the old folks, go to show you never can tell. But Leipzig, where he teaches the band to it, But when he starts off,
rock and roll, he had that famous line saying that he loved Chuck Berry's songwriting, and he said on that song Nadine, he says, "Going down the street in the coffee-coloured Cadillac," and Bruce Springsteen, big smile on his face, which helped him with his imagery. Can you imagine, looking at a coffee-coloured Cadillac? You can't quite envision it, but if you saw it, you'd see it.
Yeah. Very nice piece of alliteration as well. But yeah, just go around and see. There's a brilliant. You should watch it on YouTube. I think it's live in Leipzig. But where somebody, people come to his gigs and they hold up cards, to play songs. Yeah. Well, somebody holds up a thing, this Chuck Berry song. So he starts off playing it, and he's trying to find the key, which is good. And he's going, "Yeah, I've got it." And Steve Van Sant's going, "No, you don't want to do it there. There's a high bit. You're not going to get there." And he's going, "I can." He's going, "No, you're not."
He wrote that song, Pink Cadillac?
Yeah.
Yes.
Pink Cadillac.
What a great song.
Yes. Yeah.
And he went through a phase. My uncle played this stuff. He was doing some jazzy stuff like Fever. You Give Me Fever?
By the Pointer Sisters.
R&B.
They sang it.
No, that's Fire. That's Fire.
Fire.
Sounds like Johnny and the Asbury Jukes did Fever.
Yeah, as well. Exactly.
I got the fever for you. Yeah, great song. Yeah, really good. Yeah. But
someone Willie. I've forgotten his name.
Willie Nile.
Yeah, he did the
Willie
original
Nile?
Fever. No, not Willie Nile.
Oh, no. Sorry,
Willie.
So Johnny and the Asperjukes did Bruce Springsteen's Fever originally.
Yeah.
It's on one of their albums. I got it.
Last thing. Most of his albums, concept albums, like have a theme. Bruce?
Not concepts, but I think they have a continued theme through them, which is about working people's lives.
Yep.
If I could put it as simply as that, I think that that is the theme that he examines. Where people are, what do they do in circumstances that beyond their control. What's happening to them. What happens to somebody. They start off, and as they go through, in Independence Day. There we are. Look.
Is that the
there's
book,
the cover
Simon?
that's the book. Yeah,
That's the book. Okay, it came out a couple of years ago. So cool.
It's a fantastic book. But I think that for me is what he does, and it's themes rather than being sort of concepts, if you like, if that makes sense. Yeah. So there are themes that run through all his work. The working people who are disenfranchised, people who've got nothing. What do they do? What are the consequences of their actions? And to their relationships with each other, with their families.
Is he still a strong Catholic? Is he still a practicing Catholic?
Well,
no.
I don't. I think it's one of those things. It's like the Eagles. You could check out, but you can never leave. I think that he's elapsed. Yeah. But I don't think that makes him. I don't think he's not. I think he's still probably religious in some way. But I think the Catholic Church, I think, like in common with a lot of people, had a lot of trouble with the Catholic Church going to school. He went to Catholic school, which I don't think was a very...
But he can relate to how important the church is, sense of community.
Completely, yeah.
Being humble, charity, gratitude.
Yeah, he's always doing stuff, all those chores. Yeah, he's always doing those kind of food banks, Vietnam vet stuff, all those things.
So, Simon, let's say that you're Bruce Springsteen. You're in a mansion. You've got waiters. You've got maids. You've got the pool guy just came by. You've got your Porsche dropped off. It's just been waxed and buffed. How do you write a song about poverty?
About what?
How do you write a song about poverty?
You sing a song about the person who waxed your Porsche.
Yeah. Porsche.
Bad Leroy Brown. Baddest guy in the town, but he can wax a Porsche.
Yeah. What you have to do is you have to pretend. It's been an actor.
Yeah.
Put yourself in the character of the. But I think there's a serious point there that the best songwriters, they're only writing partly about themselves, but they also have to have. You can't just write about yourself. You have to have a universal thing in your songs. That will appeal to lots of people. There's got to be something universal in there that you put in. It's not just about me. Woe is me. You've got to have universality in those songs that make them connect with other people. And I think that is like being a good actor. A good actor can persuade you that the person they're playing is a real person and is going through these things. And I think that's the art of songwriting. A good songwriting is about putting yourself into a character, whatever that character is, not necessarily you, and drawing out what they feel, and making it real.
And I think most humans, we all can relate to this. We all have what's called an alter ego. We all have
egos, yeah.
We all have a Simon, Andrew, and Carl, but we also have someone that we wished we could be, or we admire, or something, and we basically channel our energy through that. Andrew could wish he was always an All Black. I always wished I was a league star or WWF wrestling, or maybe a Brian Jones or a Keith Richards. But we can glean or learn from those particular people.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah,
we
completely. Yeah.
Once we absorb that, I mean, like you say, actors. I've read a lot about actors in Hollywood and that. Look at Johnny Depp. He's basically done the switcheroo. He spent his whole lot. He started out as a pretty average musician, amazing actor. All his films are based around all these bizarre, odd-beat characters. He pulls them off really well. Now all of a sudden he wants to be Keith Richards. It doesn't quite work.
No, not really, because he can't
No.
be. Yeah, no.
But I still admire the guy.
Yeah. Oh, and people have to grow, and we all have to grow and change, and kind of try and move ourselves on new perspectives, new personalities, and new. I think that's fine. You have to try things out, don't you? And I think particularly musicians are always kind of trying for new personas, new things that they want to write. I mean, it's the classic thing, isn't it? Reinventing yourself as something else. David Bowie spent his entire career reinventing himself as something else.
Madonna's the same.
Madonna, yeah, completely, yeah.
Talking about Hollywood actors, Robert De Niro's wife is going to divorce Robert, and she wants $500 million.
He's not worth that much.
$500 million.
That's what I read.
Well, that would mean he's a billionaire, and he's not.
Let me just double check. I'm sure I read that. I'm sure I read it. He'd be wealthy though, wouldn't he?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe it was 50. Let me have a look.
Maybe get this stuff, Andrew. Too much time on the internet. It's
What do you do when you're in the toilet, Simon?
Yeah.
Just hold on, because I just want to read that.
I take my Bruce Springsteen book.
Okay, it's not. Okay, it's not saying anything. Okay, maybe. Where's Carl gone? Has he gone to feed the cat? Let the cat out.
I don't know what he's doing. We're looking at his wooden ceiling right now.
Yeah.
It's just he's gone out.
Yeah. He's one of the guys that you'd go up to the bar with, and you just and where's Carl? And he's gone home.
No, I just clipped the mushrooms from the garden.
He's just taken a bird home. Okay, I can't find it. It's not telling me. But anyway, sorry for interrupting your guys' train of thought there.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, but yes, you're right about that kind of actorly thing, but placing yourself in somebody else's shoes and making it believable, whatever that character's what they're feeling, what they're doing, how they are, and I think that's the art of great songwriting in many cases.
Well,
sorry,
I'll tell you what.
She wants half of his $750 million fortune.
Oh wow!
Good work.
Shivers.
You can have half of my £7.50 fortune.
Well, he's about 70 years old now, so not like that he needs most of that.
Okay, did you hear that, Judge? he doesn't need it all.
You have to make do on £350 million.
Yeah.
Oh, the sweat, oh, the toil.
Here's an interesting story.
It's hard not to be cynical, isn't it? It's hard not to be cynical about that when you're dealing with those sorts of sums of money.
Yeah.
Anyway, go on, Carl. Go on.
Oh, sorry. This is way off topic, but it's relevant to music and what's current and hip now. But there's, I don't mind a little bit of hip hop, not much at all. But there's one guy called Tupac Shakur who was famous. Yeah. Basically, he was raised in a very militant family, educated, went to pretty good schools. Mothers did his best. He did a film called Juice where he was a gangster. And they said after that film, he basically became that character called Bishop in the film. And then he modeled himself off this thug life persona. And then he ultimately died representing that mindset.
Wow.
But he was never that way. But he was he was an actor first and foremost. Yeah. He did come from a hard upbringing. But there's a lot of these young hip hop guys now R&B guys who make all these millions and all of a sudden drive into the hood, where most people in the hood or the ghetto want to drive out. You got all these guys making millions want to drive in.
Mm.
That's the weirdest thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well,
So,
because somehow has a cool about it, doesn't it? A mystique, a kind of.
well, I think what
know?
it is, there's two things in life. It's one is to be loved and one is to be feared. And unfortunately, most of these people want to be feared. They think that's a deep source of love, to be feared. You know.
Yeah.
What's that famous saying? Life imitates art, or art imitates life.
Yeah. Art imitates life. Yeah. Yes. Forgetting to leave that persona on a film. That would be odd, yeah. If you just, that's taking method acting to extremes, isn't it?
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
Not, identifying so fully, you just continue to do it.
But I've always liked Bruce. I always have. I could, even as a kid, listening to his interviews and listening to his music, there was a slight hint of commercialism, radio sound there, but I knew that because of his body of work, he was better than that.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, that's the other thing, isn't it? What do you do about what do you do? You want to be commercial, you want to sell records, you want to reach as many people as possible, whilst trying to remain authentic. It's quite.
I don't have a problem with
with
80s commercial music, Simon and Carl. I don't have a problem with it.
I mean, if I had a choice, if I was me, I would love to be. I still am me, I think.
I hope you are still you.
As far as we're concerned,
you're not that property tycoon yet, are you?
If I had a choice, I'd love to be authentic initially, remain authentic the whole time. But who doesn't want success?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Nothing wrong with success.
And if you're working class or blue collar, if you've got a parent or a group of parents or a set of elders above you that are worth anything, they will be giving you guidelines to at least, improve your
and the ultimate
improve yourself.
It's how that success changes you. That's the ultimate question.
Well, that's right. Yeah, exactly. That's
right. Yeah, and how you deal with it, and how you deal with those sort of the madness, and Springsteen talks eloquently in his biography about the madness around Born in the USA, and kind of how he dealt, how it was, quite, I think he found it all a bit crazy, really, that kind of tabloid news, every move you make is kind of scrutinized. He said at one point, because he married that actress Juliana Phillips, he said at one point, the papers would print beds that they had slept in. But made up just the room, it's just like you just turned up when Bruce Springsteen stayed here, and they would print these. But he said, I can't understand why would anybody be interested in what bed I'd slept in? It's just really weird.
So he had a long-standing wife, but he ended up becoming involved with the red-headed guitar player in the band?
No, he didn't. He had a short-standing wife called Juliana Phillips. She was an actress, and he's. He says in the book, he's not, he says, it's my fault, I just, I wasn't ready for it. And, but I think that Patti Scialfa, he'd known Patti Scialfa for years, because she comes from New Jersey. He'd seen her singing in clubs, where he was. And obviously she'd auditioned for something in the past as well, one of his bands in the past. And I think he'd said to her, look, we're going to be traveling around, So, and he auditioned, he saw her and he said, come and sing in the E Street Band. And then while he was still married to Juliana Phillips, he started having a relationship with Patti Scialfa. And they've been married for 25 years or something. They've been married for quite a long time. So basically, she's his long-standing wife, but he had a short-standing wife before that.
And he says, he got mocked in the media at that time too, Simon. I remember, I don't know where, but reading articles where people were saying, these are music journalists were saying, this is the guy that was going on about family life and, the the sanctity of it, you know, and he's hooked up with the guitar player of his band and ditched his wife for so many years. He got kicked in the nuts for it.
Yeah.
Good.
And I think first of all, you know, I mean, he is very unsparingly unsympathetic towards himself in that situation, saying, you know, I did a crappy thing, I did a horrible thing, you know, it wasn't her fault at all, it was mine, you know, my foibles and my hang-ups and my, you know, got in the way of it, and you know, really, it wasn't. You know, it wasn't Juliana's fault. It was his. You know, that's what his take on it from now is.
Mm.
You know,
with his blue collar background, at least talking about it, did he? I know he's very political and he's very democratic and very obviously blue. Did he ever go and join the picket lines or go to the union protests, or did he ever get really?
No. I don't think he's ever done that, but I mean, he's obviously done a lot of supporting of those causes. So every town he played in, you know, he would meet the union guys and he would put money into food banks and stuff.
Food banks is a big thing.
Yeah, in the UK, when he came in, Born in the USA tour, I don't know if you know about this, but in the 80s we had something called the miners' strike.
Yeah.
Which is where the government, Mrs.
Thatcher was taken on after Scargill.
Yeah, she took on Scargill. Now, basically, he gave money to the miners' unions, you know, to help support the miners' unions during that.
Don't people go to his concerts and they bring a tin of baked beans or something like that, and they drop it off
food bank stuff? Yeah, and he, you know, he'll give money to local food banks, local, you know, Vietnam vet charities and stuff, give them a hand to get them set up.
So there's people that drive their Porsches, Cal, to Bruce Springsteen concerts. They'll take a can of beans
and then put the Porsche.
They'll pay $300 for their Bruce Springsteen
Hey, look, there's
ticket.
Simon leaving a can of beans. Just left in a jag.
And throw their can of beans in the collection.
What a nice, kind guy Simon is. Left in his jag and popped in a can of beans.
But let's be fair,
you can't tag too.
It's not a Jag. It's his Land Rover. He's got a Land Rover.
You can't get many cans of beans in a Porsche, can you?
No.
Let's be fair. Besides the golf clubs. Individual beans you have to take in a Porsche. There's no space for anything else.
Oh no, he's good.
Oh dear.
Hey guys, thanks so much. I've really enjoyed. Thank you so much.
Thanks for allowing me to indulge myself in the.
Yeah. No, it's been a great show. Yeah. It's been a great show.
The topic of Bruce Springsteen, like I said, he's an enigma to me. He's a guy that I've known about, but want to know more about, but I probably never know everything I need to know, unfortunately, because he is just one of about 5 that are just heavyweights, you know.
Yeah, completely.
And unfortunately, my time is limited. So, but I agree with you, Simon. I went through a phase in my late 20s in Austin where I read about maybe 10 or 15 musical autobiographies, and some were better than others. But some, like Al Green, Rod Stewart, some were like they were just talking to you. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Just you felt like Rod Stewart was talking to you. I think it was Vagabond Heart. Al Green was, I think, Take Me to the River.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll take Simon at his word, and I'll put that on my book list to read when I'm on my Christmas holidays. The best book that I've read, and I keep talking about it, is Keith Richards' Life. I know he wrote that with somebody, but if I'm going to learn something about Bruce Springsteen and get a bit of an idea of what makes him a musician, as an artist.
There's nothing worse than when you got some punk Hollywood reporter who's cliff notes, copy and paste, talking points. This disjointed literature, really. You know, it just doesn't
completely.
flow.
Yeah. Whereas, you know, as I say, I think the Springsteen book is one of the best I've written. Certainly as an autobiography, and writing it yourself, you know, doing it. I think that it does give you a tremendous insight into him. growing up and his influences and his psychology and stuff as well, which I think is rare in the world of show business.
But that's what we like, though, and that's what we talk about on this show, Simon.
It's important.
We want to know why did Eric Clapton. What was going on in his life when he was writing Layla? That's important. What were these forces coming together? And there was some, obviously there's some urban myths out there, and there's some truths that we've picked up in our archaeology. So, if we can get just that from reading.
One more thing, just if you've got a bit of time, one of the great things that Springsteen does is he releases quite a lot of his concerts. You can buy them live, because obviously he's the great live concert man, 3 hours,
4 hour concerts.
Well, you can buy lots of his concerts. He releases them on something called nugs.net, Nugs. I think they do lots of other stuff live time, but you can buy them. And I've bought quite a lot of them. I bought the Wembley show in 1981, not the night I went to, but very similar. One of the other nights, and they're available, and they're really worth delving into.
Can you play Born to Run on guitar?
Yeah, I can actually. Yeah. It's not very difficult. E, A, and B, basically.
Wow. Three chords, just like the
Stones. 3 chords and the truth.
Yep. 3 chords, brother.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. Yep. You guys can carry on.
Oh well, no, it's rumbling time for me. It's
Andrew, dinner.
It's dinner time. So
time for me.
So before you shoot off, Carl, we'll get Simon to do the final goodbyes to the people in the chat, and then we'll end the show if that's cool.
You'll notice vanity's taken over. I've taken my glasses off for most of this.
No.
Thanks to Arvin for hanging in, Sonia, and who else do we have? We had a couple other people. Phil Mosley, music. Thanks, Phil, for dropping by, and Mike Build as well. Thanks, guys, for dropping in. Did I miss anybody? I don't think I did. Sonia, awesome. Arvin, Phil. Yeah.
That's cool.
Mike, yeah. Good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Carl, and thank you, Andrew. It's been, lots of fun. Indulging in my nonsense.
Hey, I tell you what, I mean, listen, I think that, I think, like I said before, Bruce is someone that I've always wanted to investigate. And thank you, Simon, for bringing me.
That's fine. Yeah.
Bringing Andrew and myself a bit closer to who the boss is. Is he the boss?
Yeah.
The boss. Yeah. Warren, we've got a new bloke, Warren H in the chat. Hi, Warren.
Warren Haynes.
Warren Haynes. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think. Maybe the H does stand for Haynes. You could tell. Warren, apologies. We're at the end of our time, not the beginning. So, but do by all means go and watch it on replay.
Yeah, we're winding up, Warren. So maybe next time.
But yeah, thanks for dropping by. It's very cool. Yeah.
Okay. See you guys later.
Take care, eh?
Right.
See you next time.
Yeah. Cheers,
Thanks,
Carl.
all.